Okay, viewers, in this video, we'll be going and make configurations to the output tab in Inav. Now, in the last video, we gone through mixers and we cleared an issue that appeared on top here. But right here, we have another issue because since we just installed this firmware onto our drone, onto our flight controller, we have to now get some things out of the way so we can get that drone up and running. Now, here we can see PWM output is disabled, and that basically the power to your motor, and therefore it says motors and servos will not work, so use the output tab to enable. Now, here we are on the output tab in Inav, and you have enable motor and servo output right here. It was disabled by default, but let me tell you exactly what you have to enable it. My motors right here are BLDC, which is brushless DC motors, and these motors, they use the D-Shot 300 or D-Shot 600 protocol that I use on Betaflight by default. So these motors is 1050 kV, and is basically you have to find out what protocol that they use. But for a fact, I've been using D-Shot 300 on these. It's been working really well for me, and that's generally like the default for it specifically. Now it uses the D-Shot 300 ESC protocol. Now the ESC is actually what that protocol is mapped to, and that is that little part, that little 4-in-1 motor controller or speed controller under my flight controller right here, where all my motors are connected to. It has its own firmware built onto its ROM, and therefore that's why I use D-Shot 300. And it works basically with my motors because my ESC sends the output to my motors. Now, there are different protocols there, but like I said, I'm just keep it on D-Shot 300 right here. Now, the servo refresh rate. We do have a servo, fortunately. We do have a servo installed, and we'll be getting to how to install a servo with Inav, and that's the real good thing about it, because Inav works really well with servos. It's generally really good for aircrafts and so on, or planes. And servo refresh rate, you're gonna leave it at 50 Hz. I don't need too much out of that servo. So here you can see stock motors on low throttle. So I'm going to turn that off so that my FPV, when armed, it will always turn on when the throttle. My motors will always be spinning and idling when the motor, when the drone is disarmed. But if you have low throttle and you're going to stop the motor, then therefore that's what you enable. So your motor idle percentage, I usually have it at 5%, and is either 5 or 4 I usually use on Betaflight. So I'll be using it as 5% of its usual speed. So to find the speed of your motor, it's basically for every volt that this motor will use, it will have 1050 RPM, because it is labeled on it right here at 1050 kilovolts. So 5% of that will give me a certain amount of spins, and I think I'm really happy with that. Just for the idle, that's very good. The throttle scale. So throttle scale is going to be 1. That throttle scale is generally the output of your yokes on your transmitter. So for every movement of this, if I theoretically flood my throttle and send all the way up, that's 100%. Now, if 100% is equals to 1 throttle scale, meaning all the way up means I'll be sending out all the output. But if I want to scale it down, I can cut it in half by removing the 1 right here and put it 0.5. Let's say all the way up is going to be half the amount of output to my motors. So if my motors had on full throttle, let's see, 6,000 revolutions, 6,000 spins, 0.5 will cut it down to 3,000 spins on full throttle now. Now generally I'm going to leave it as 1, and here we have number of motor poles. So number of magnets. For each coil we have in our motor, we have a magnet, and I can generally count it from under, and I can count I have 12 poles. I have 12 magnets in this here. I can also count it from the top. So generally, since I have 12 poles, I'm going to move from 14 up to 12, but let's reassure. So yes, I have 12 poles. So all of that is basic tuning for your PWM. And here you can have the reverse motor mode for use with reversible ESCs. Now we don't have a reversible ESC. Well, we have a reversible ESC, but we are not going to be reversing the motors. So that there, we're going to leave it as that. And I put my idle as 4 instead. We'll just do a bit better. So here you can see the same, just like your mixer right here. You can see your motors, and here you can have a master. So what I'm going to do, I'm now going to enable motor on servo outputs and then press save right here. So now I will have my motors spin when my drone is plugged into power. So right here I can now plug my drone into the power, and before it will usually just reboot and reboot and reboot every single time, because the ESC probably have that message that the PWM is not enabled and the motor can't spin to make the beep, and that's why you have to enable the motor and servo outputs. Now that has been done, and for now everything looks good. I plugged in the drone, it no longer loops, and I understand that the propellers are removed, and I accept the risk, and now test out my motor responses. So what I can see right here, my motor is actually spinning, and I find that I am content with that right here. So below you have servo output. So if you actually have a servo configured, you can also check out that servo down here. You can find out its output, and I believe that a servo output usually comes to the corner. Now it's going to be down here, and you can also try that servo basically using the CLI. So that's it for this video, guys. And the next video we will be going through ports. So step by step we'll be configuring this FPV flight controller and get it ready for flight.